Sitaram viewers, and welcome to another edition of the Hindu Perspective, a program prepared and presented by Swaha for the purpose of bringing some level of understanding, elucidation, enlightenment to the members of the general public as it relates to various aspects of Hinduism and, of course, various aspects that we see globally and in our nation and regionally. Today, we once again have on our panel our president, Pandit Ishwar Madhu Maharaj. We have one of our guest pundits, a member of the organization, of course, Pandit Chandrat Maharaj, who is part of the executive of SWAHA. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Vaalmikki Arjoon, who I'm sure is no stranger to each and every one of you. So before we move into our program, as we normally do, I'll pass over the president of SWAHA, Pandit Ishwar, who will begin with an opening prayer and give us any updates that are needed as it relates to SWAHA events before we move into our discussion. Panditji.
Yes, thanks, Pandit Jaidat, Sitram, and welcome everyone. I ask that we all join together in prayer. In our minds, Om Ganganapati Namaha. Om Yam Brahma Vedanta Vido Vadanti Param Pradhanam Purusham Tathanye Vishwogate Karam Ishwaram Vatasmai Namo Vigna Vinashanaya Om Sri Vigneshwaraya Namaha Om Ganganapate Namaha. बोली श्री गजानन स्वामी की जय, स्वाहा माता की जय, सत्य सनातन धर्म की जय. So once again, welcome to our viewers and to all our regular viewers and those who may be joining for the first time. This, of course, is a program of Swaha, the Dharma Mandala of Swaha, and it is a Hindu perspective. But we look at various aspects of Hinduism, and today will be a really interesting program. We're happy to have Dr. Vaalmikki Arjoon, but Pandit Jaidat will do the formal introductions in a short while. And of course, Pandit Chandrat Maharaj, who is also an expert in his field, and you will hear and realize why he is with us this evening for this special program. I want to tell you also, as many of our viewers would know, this would be the first program after Indian arrival celebrations. We would have had a fantastic Indian arrival on the 30th of May at Mahatma Gandhi Institute. And actually, our special guest, Dr. Arjoon, was there, as was Pandit Chandradat. And the reality is, all of this it would have been a culmination of that last couple of months of recognition, which Pandit Jaidat and myself, together with Pandit Gyandev, would have been leading in discussions on Prabhu Sri Ram, Ram Aayenge, and what it means for us, the return of Prabhu Sri Ram to Ayodhya, but more importantly, you and I, in our minds, in our hearts, the dawn once again of all the noble attributes and virtues that we want to prevail in our minds. So it was really a wonderful celebration. I want to thank, on behalf of the executive, Pandit Chandradat is indeed the secretary of SWAHA, to thank all our viewers who would have been there. Many of you came and met us on the day, and we are grateful for your support. And you can, stay tuned for other activities coming up. Pandit Jaidat.
Okay, thank you, Panditji. And we have a very distinguished panel, and of course, Pandit Ishwar, the former principal of the Swaha Hindu College and currently a SS3, Panditji, and Pandit Chandrat, who very distinguished in the field of accounting and finance, a former director of the SEC. He is FCCA qualified, and he's currently the CFO of TATIL. And today, our special guest, Dr. Vaalmikki Arjoon. And I have a profile here on Doc. So Dr. Vaalmikki Arjoon is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, where he currently lectures in finance, economics, and statistics at the Department of Management Studies. Prior to joining UWI, he lectured at the University of Nottingham in the UK and at their campus in China. He also received his PhD and MSc degrees in finance, economics from the University of Nottingham. At the moment, he is one of the youngest full-time lecturer at the University of the West Indies. Dr. Arjoon currently serves on the Council of the Institute of Banking and Finance of Trinidad and Tobago. He is also a member of several professional international bodies, including the Royal Economic Society, the Leeuwenhoek Institute for Globalization and Economic Policy, and the Western Economic Association. He also travels regularly internationally to present at many economic and financial conferences. In addition, he supervises MSc and PhD theses at UE and has also published several of his research studies in the field of financial economics in a number of international peer-reviewed academic journals. So, Dr. Arjoon, we are very privileged to have you here, and that is indeed a very impressive profile. And I would go so far as to say that one of your greatest achievements is that having done all of those studies, having this level of qualification, that you remain a proud servant of your dharma, a proud Hindu, and you serve your community in many different ways. So, Doc, we are very happy to have you here, and we'll jump straight into the discussion that we have been asking, Vaalmikki for quite a while to join us on our program. He has graciously agreed. We have just, been trying to find a time where his schedule aligned with ours, and finally that has happened. So, Doc, before we get into the program, is there anything that you'd like to share with us? Any greetings you'd like to give to our listeners, and then we can jump into the topic for today?
Yeah, Sitaram Panditji. I actually feel very, very privileged to be on this program tonight. I think the topic is a very exciting one. It's not one that I've really discussed much or ever at all with anyone. So when you had approached me some weeks ago to talk about relating economics and Hinduism, I instantly got excited about it, because there's a lot of, from our culture, our traditional background, going back eon centuries ago, back to the Vedic ages, a lot of principles, Vedic principles, that if we were to apply now, not just our household and our families and ourselves, but our entire country can be in a far better economic position. And these are principles that our very ancestors would have learned, would have discovered, would have brought with them from India to Trinidad and Tobago, would have lived by also. And I think it's, now is the time, especially the great the great revolution that we're seeing internationally with respect to Hindus, not just in India, but the opening of the Sri Ram Mandir, but the renewed inspiration that Hindus are seeing and are feeling internationally. Now is really, there's no better time for us to introduce our traditions, especially with respect to the economics and finance aspect of it, and utilizing it more in our daily lives, and pushing for it to be adopted by the authorities in our country to better everyone's lives in the country.
So thank you for those statements, Doc, and we'll use that as a springboard for our discussion. So you mentioned that our traditions, they are grounded in scriptures, going back centuries. And we all know that there's a lot of scientific evidence. There's a lot of information in terms of technology, in terms of governance, as it relates to Hinduism and the way that society was structured at one point in time. So based on your own research, based on your knowledge, can you just give us some information beyond just the technology and the science part of it? What would our scriptures have indicated? What would have been the principles and the values as it relates to economics? And what scriptures would contain this type of information?
So, without a doubt, one of the most famous economists from our tradition, our history, was Kautilya Chanakya. He was actually a great rishi who authored the text called the Arthashastra. Now, simply put, the Arthashastra uses the teachings, teachings of the Vedic tradition to formulate strategies on how to govern a country from an economic point of view and also a military and political standpoint. And it was his teachings in this sacred text that led to one of the golden ages in Bharat Mata. I'm not referring to the country as India as more Bharat Mata, because back then it wasn't just India; it was several other countries looped into one. So it was his teachings that led to one of the golden ages in Bharat Mata when the Gupta dynasty ruled. In fact, Chanakya was basically a kingmaker. He was the one that was responsible for getting Chandragupta Maurya on the throne around 321 BCE. And again, this was a time when there was religious and cultural diversity in India, but his teachings led the economy, but the Bharat economy to become a global economic and a political powerhouse at that time. And a lot of the teachings of the Artha Shastra are very much applicable today. And I think if we were to adopt some of his teachings, our economy would be in a far better off position. In fact, one of the very first things he talks about is that a king and his ministers, or the government rather, they are really solely there to protect the people in his country, and not only by giving them military protection and security, but also there to protect their economic well-being in a fair manner that was consistent with the rules of Dharma. Now, as we would all appreciate that our tradition is rooted in Dharati Mata, the land. So the Artha Shastra prioritizes the land, specifically agriculture, as the most crucial sector for the economic welfare and prosperity of a country. So for him, for Chanakya, the backbone of any economy was agriculture. That was the key sector to ensuring the well-being of its people. And we here in Trinidad and Tobago have been speaking about the need to boost our agricultural sector for several decades now, as a matter of fact, but nothing seems to be done about it. We're racking up a very high food import bill every single year that exceeds $6 billion. But he recognized early o'clock a nation needs to be able to feed themselves properly and of course nutritiously, in a matter so that it not only ensures their health, because an unhealthy population is what you want to avoid, but he also stressed that there should be zero dependence on other nations for food items. Because if you depend on others to feed you, then are you really an independent state? Are you really a sovereign state at the end of the day? So first of all, the king or the government had a responsibility to ensure that farmers had adequate access to land for farming. So there was a great deal of equity and fairness in the access to land. And the king also, I was supposed to advocate for proper and continuous intervention and support for agriculture, which emphasizes the need for things like proper land management, constructing of essential infrastructure like irrigation systems to ensure that there's a consistent supply of water for crops. Kautilya Chanakya also emphasized that the king was required to ensure that farmers had sufficient access to seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, tools, equipments, and the list goes on and on. So back then, a lot of investment, much investment was made in agriculture, in providing not just farmers with support, but having sophisticated market facilities. In fact, one of the things that Chanakya proposed is that the entire road network of a country should be designed to make it easier or very easy rather, for merchants and customers to get to the market. So the market was one of the focal points, or if not the main focal point of an economy back then, where many customers from the same kingdom or neighboring kingdoms could come very quickly to purchase whatever they needed to purchase. In fact, many are not even aware of this, but back in his day, in the Gupta dynasty's days, agriculture reached such a degree of perfection in India. The state was required to continuously invest in understanding and evolving the agricultural techniques and technology, like skills in crop diversity to crop rotation to maintain soil fertility and enhance yields, building technology in agriculture, among a host of other agricultural skills. And the king also provided protection to farmers, apart from, of course, the king as a Kshatriya would provide security for his people, but it's not just that, it's also protection of from predial larceny from those in outside kingdoms. And all of these were used to ensure that the kingdom had an adequate and a secure food supply, and also that the state earned substantial revenues from agriculture, which would have ensured their economic stability at the same time. In fact, also the state, the king and his government They designed a very sophisticated market system based on the teachings of Chanakya that ensured fair pricing and also a pricing system, a market system that prevented exploitation of customers, exploitation of the people, so that the state is not only protecting the farmers' interests and promoting a prosperous agriculture, but at the same time, they're ensuring the prosperity of the entire economy as well.
So very interesting. I mean, a lot of that, I'm sure that we had many of us have no knowledge of that. So I'll just ask one or two things, make one or two comments, and I'll pass over to the other members of the panel who may have some questions as we move forward. So the first, I mean, just drawing from what you all said, we are seeing that maintaining a prosperous economy is obviously linked to a high level of technology and scientific development, because you spoke about the road network, the infrastructure, the crop rotation, which is all very scientific in nature, understanding the land, etc. And all of that would have obviously fed into that economic prosperity. And from what you are saying also, a big aspect of it is not just a country earning wealth, but it's the way and the manner in which that wealth is used for the purpose of ensuring that there's proper, there's equity, equal distribution or equitable distribution, so that there's a proper standard of living for all members of a society, which speaks to something that's very utopian in nature. The second question, well, I'd like to ask this question, I'll pass over to members of the panel. Now, you spoke about these ideologies of Chanakya, but I know that, you know, at least when I did economics, we always learn about Karl Marx and Adam Smith, etc. And are there any alignment between what you have seen in this Arthashastra compared to maybe some of the teachings of Marx and Adam Smith, etc., and that is adopted by the Western world?
So at this point in time, as you mentioned, that Prime Minister Modi has been attempting, or what I have observed is that he has been attempting to utilize a lot of the teachings in the Arthashastra through, I think one of the economists in the BJP, Subramaniam Swamy, speaks about it to some degree. What we've noticed is that the concept of a free market, which was proposed in the Arthashastra, that is the focal point of how our economic system ought to work. But at the same time, the king is really there for protection and also for regulation and support. Many economies globally tend to do that, and in fact, the more market-based economies, the capitalist-based economies, particularly the developed ones like the United States, etc. Bringing it to a more local perspective, we talk about diversification quite a lot in Trinidad and Tobago. And even though agriculture was the prime focus of the state, the Arthashastra also pushed for a well-diversified economy. So they would have pushed for things like back then mining for metals, precious metals and gems, animal husbandry, and manufacturing type activity in the form of weaving cloth, trading in wool, etc. All of which to facilitate a well-developed local marketplace. And not only that, Chanakya was a huge advocate for international trade. And we've seen, of course, the how globalized the nature of this globalized economy that we are living in. He was a huge advocate for international trade, but more so for the exporting side. In fact, he urged that countries ought to be more self-sufficient, and he encouraged, even though he does encourage trading with foreign nations, it's not just done to bring wealth into the country, but trading ought to have been done also to encourage military linkages, to learn also about other countries' production techniques, to adopt some of their skill sets and strategies, etc. He was one of those that was against importing luxury goods excessively. In fact, those were the goods that he advocated should see the brunt of taxation, because at the end of the day, even though Chanakya stressed that a government and a king is there for the primarily, in fact, solely for the welfare of his country and his people, Chanakya was also at the same time a taxman. Taxation was also very, very important to him. But the approach that he took wasn't like the approach a certain minister is taking that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Chanakya advocated for a well-organized and an efficient, and of course, and above all else, a fair system of revenue collection to ensure that taxes were proportionate to the citizens' capacity. So the idea behind taxes in his time is that they're not supposed to be burdensome and they're not supposed to be excessive. They're just supposed to be enough to enable the king and his government to continue to provide basic and essential services to the people, like developing a state-of-the-art military, health services, road and water infrastructure for the country's granaries, markets, among a host of other services. Taxes were levied back then according to people's ability to pay these taxes. And he proposed that they were only paid once a year. Can you imagine if we were paying taxes in Trinidad and Tobago once a year? Wouldn't that be something?
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, he proposed a host of other taxes, like there were taxes on agricultural produce, taxes on trade, like tariffs, tolls on roads. He even proposed in his scripture land and property tax. But again, these were taxes that were levied according to people's ability to pay for them. Taxes were never meant to be burdensome or interruptive, disruptive in nature. What they were meant to do is simply provide the kingdom, the state, with money to be able to ensure the welfare of the people, and at the same time ensuring that people get value for money when they pay their taxes.
So I'll ask members of the panel if there's any comments you'd like to make or questions you'd like to post, Dr. Vaalmikki. So maybe we can start with Pandit Chandrat.
Thanks,
See that, you know, his area is related to economics and finance also.
Yes, finance, more or less economics. But, you know, Dr. Arjoon, that's well interesting because, you know, in preparation for this as well, I did some light reading. I mean, obviously not the depth that you did, or what you would have studied. But in looking at it, I mean, the principles of what would have occurred then and what is contained in the Arthasastra, it holds true today, right? 100%, not in any, you know, in any piecemeal way, but 100% of it actually is relevant today. I mean, in your readings and in the work that you do in economics and so on, have you actually had an idea of, you know, how far away are we from that? And if you were to get closer to that, what would be maybe 2 or 3 of your low-hanging fruits that we could look at for Trinidad and Tobago specifically that can get us closer to what that would look like in terms of a utopian society like Pandit Jadat would have mentioned. I mean, we speak about diversity, like you said, we say it a lot, but that is it's a tall ask and it's a longer game. It's not something that happens overnight. It happens not even in medium term, but really is a long-term initiative. But what are some of the things that we can do now that could get us closer to that point that we can actually see tangible benefits as a society in Trinidad and Tobago based upon the Sastra?
Right. So the Arthashastra, the first thing I discussed at length, focuses heavily on agriculture. Right. We've been talking about agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago and developing agriculture for decades, but more so in the last few years, especially given the fact that we have a very high food import bill. The sector contributes a meager less than 1% of our overall GDP. But at the same time, we don't necessarily have the adequate foreign exchange to continue importing, especially importing food items from abroad. As you would appreciate, much of the food items that we primarily consume on a daily basis tend to be imported, even though some of these items can be grown here and are grown here as well, just not necessarily grown here in adequate quantities. And if they are grown here in adequate quantities, they're quite expensive. Some find it even cheaper to import it. Now, what the Arthashastra recommends heavily is continuous investment in developing your agricultural techniques and technology in agriculture. We are seeing the world move from the traditional system of agriculture that we still apply here in Trinidad and Tobago, and they're moving now towards utilizing smart technology in agriculture. So a simple example, using drones to apply your pesticides. In fact, one drone can apply pesticides to the equivalent of over 20 football fields of 20 football fields, agricultural land equivalent to 20 football fields in one day or even less. With respect to ensuring that you have adequate soil quality and knowing and understanding what other nutrients you need to provide for your soil, there's technology developed in the form of sensors and other detection mechanisms that can be used on a daily basis to tell a farmer, just by looking at his laptop or on his iPad or even his mobile phone, what nutrients he needs to provide to his soil every day, how much to adjust it by, in order to ensure that he can optimize the output from his fields. There's also technology to let you know if your crops are getting adequate sunlight, if they need more sunlight, if they need more irrigation, or they're getting too much water, that sort of thing. There's smart technology that I could go on and on about this, by the way, because I've done a bit of research on it as well. There's technology that can be applied. It is being applied in the Netherlands and the UK that can, like a smart band for your livestock to monitor when they're going to give milk, the quality of the milk that they're going to provide, to monitor their health, especially when, for example, a cow is pregnant and about to give birth. These are things that we need to start looking to apply here in Trinidad and Tobago, because when you use smart technology, what it does is, at the end of the day, help you to optimize your output, help you to optimize your crop production per acreage of land more efficiently. That is where our Ministry of Agriculture needs to focus their investments on now. When you look at the ministry's website and you hear them in the budget every year, yes, they do have an ample amount of support for farmers in TNT. And the Arthur Shastra stresses on that the king is there to provide support for agriculture, because agriculture is the backbone of the economy. The problem with us, however, is one, still don't have adequate amount of farmers, and two, the farmers that you have, many of them don't have land tenure. And in the agricultural world, when you don't have land tenure, you're not a legitimate business. It's equivalent to not being a legitimate business. So you cannot go to the Ministry of Agriculture and apply for much of the incentives, the tax breaks, the incentives that they have to help you get equipment, etc., once you don't have that land tenure. So really you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. The ministry need to, I think, change, the government need to change their model, the agricultural model in TNT, by reviewing this whole concept of land tenure in the first place, maybe trying to find a faster mechanism to speed up the process of granting those land tenure, but paying more attention to adopting more technology use and moving away from the traditional forms of agriculture in TNT, which is similar to what the Arthur Shastra would have stressed these centuries ago. I just want to talk really quickly about another sector here, because that is directly linked to our culture, manufacturing. Since COVID times, we would have seen the manufacturing sector more or less on its own. This wasn't really because of any strategy from the government, not really anyway. The manufacturing sector on its own, largely on its own, would have enhanced their operations to such an extent where they were able to take advantage of increased demand for a lot of the goods that they produce internationally. So they would have captured a greater portion of their market share. What happened during COVID is that when there were lockdowns, people weren't spending. So when economies came out of lockdowns and economies reopened, there was a surge in global spending, which meant an increase in the demand for all types of commodities. Now, our manufacturing sector took great advantage of that, and they were able to ramp up their production levels and their exports, so they captured more market share. The sector grew. In fact, I remember looking at some data recently, and the non-energy manufacturing sector grew by just over 30% between the third quarter of 2020 and the third quarter of 2023, the most recent data we have. So what we're seeing here locally is that there are companies, there's a particular company, as a matter of fact, that started off as a puja store, right? And started off providing puja items in order to facilitate our daily rituals and rituals whenever we have several festivals, etc. And that puja store has diversified, has evolved into a horizontal linkage, as we say in economics, and gotten into manufacturing and specifically food processing. I'm referring to the little stores, Chatak brand, where they're now into food processing. So they provide a lot of the legumes, chickpeas, dal, split peas, etc., red beans, blacktail, clove, a list of items as well. And of course they're into the food processing of things like achar, pepper sauce, and the list goes on. I think that's actually quite highly commendable that an institution that started off as a little puja store many decades ago has now diversified, not just as a very large retail outlet, but also into the food processing component of manufacturing.
Ironically, they still call themselves a little store.
Yeah.
You're not so little anymore.
Not so little anymore. Yeah.
Now, a big part of this, obviously, you spoke about the agriculture extensively, and a large part of that is really citizens developing the right mindset, which starts at the school level. So I know that we have Pandit Ishwar here, who, as the principal of the school, and an SS3 also, could probably speak to what is being done at the level of the secondary school to encourage this entrepreneurial type mindset, interest in agriculture, which really is the sustenance of any economy through the curriculum, etc. So Panditji, I don't know if you would like to contribute to this and any other part of the discussion.
Sure. Of course, I just want to say I'm listening and I'm in awe of the knowledge being shared here by Dr. Arjoon and Pandit Chandradat also. But Dr. Vaalmikki has actually, in reminding us about Chanakya, there are a number of things I want to mention, right? Before I get to the school, but I'll do so quickly. Now, our Paramachar Panajayada Pandit Chandradat, regularly quotes from Chanakya Maharaj, right? Same Kautilya, Chanakya. The Arthashastra, the Chanakyan Niti, it is called, with so many different rules and sayings and advice that he has given, from economics to politics, to science, military, warcraft, and all of this. But I want our viewers, and especially young people, the same children who are in school and are being told, no offense to Dr. Arjoon, but by many lecturers, I remember myself too having to listen to, and I felt as though I came from a society that did nothing, achieved nothing at all. But, and I'm saying that's not Dr. Arjoon, he's given us a reality here. Our society is one that was, treasured by everyone else all around the world. We are called West Indies because everyone was trying to get to India. They wanted to get all the wealth, the same economics that we're speaking about, and the society that's well developed, the agrarian society, but manufacturing was ramped up to such an extent thousands of years ago in India. The Maurya Gupta Empire and the Maurya Empire stretched all the way to even Afghanistan, right, Dr. Arjoon, past Afghanistan, all through Burma, Cambodia, Myanmar, all these places. Almost down to the south, not the entire south region, but huge area, much bigger than India now. So this is why when you hear BJP talk about Bharat Mata, and they want to call India Bharat, because it speaks to the greatness of this tradition that we have come from, where civilizations all over. Alexander the Great wanted to go to Bharat Mata, right? The British, we know, and that's where colonialism, the advent of the British and so many others, the East India Company and so on, wanting to take these riches and use it for themselves and develop their own society. So India and Bharat Mata helped by way of the same principles that Chanakya Maharaj, Kautilya Chanak, same individual, developed right there in India. It actually contributed to the development of Western society. And this is something that I want our Hindu brothers and sisters, our children especially, to be proud of. And then, I was happy to hear Dr. Arjoon speak about importance of agriculture. And I will go to scriptures, right? Sri Ram, Sita Mata rather, the wife of Prabhu Sri Ram. You remember that katha? Raja Janak was plowing the land. So he was actually plowing the land. That was important. Bhumi, the importance of Dharti Mata, Bhumi Mata. Then we see Balramji, right? Balbhadra, the elder brother of Sri Krishna Bhagwan. His weapon was a plow, right? They were agriculturists. His weapon was a plow. What is the message being sent? And even the Govardhan Katha, which is found in Bhagavad Mahapuran, there's a lot that, if you listen to the actual and assimilate the knowledge present within it, we learn about the water cycle, we learn about agriculture, you learn about the way in which we are bound by the land and we should nurture the land because it will nourish us. all of this is actually in our scriptures. So what Dr. Arjoon is saying, this has come from our tradition, from our scriptures. It was built upon and refined rather by people like Kautilya, Chanakya Maharaj, and put in a formal way that might have been more palatable and more appealing to the intellectuals. And there were universities in India far before there's anything like Oxford and Cambridge, and they talk about Alexandria in Egypt. There's Takshashila in Bharat Desh, which today I think will fall in where's Pakistan now. But all of this is the great tradition that we came from. And so economics and art, I want to go back to that. Artha Shastra, art, dharma, kama, moksha, or first fruit or goal of human existence is art. We always say art, whether you say dharma, art, kama, moksha, whatever may be the order, moksha is the last one. For many people, art. You cannot sit and pray if you're hungry. You can't sit and enjoy life. Art is important, material wealth. Our religion or scriptures never say you're born poor, die poor, remain poor. You're encouraged to develop yourself materially, financially. Even Sri Ram, in speaking Panajayada, you'll know this well, Prabharshan Parbat Katata to Lakshman. When he saw the water flowing down, he said, Lakshman, look at the streams. Those streams with the water flowing quickly. It reminds me of the foolish individual, that devotee who, as soon as he got a little bit of money, you fritter it away, you waste it away, not wanting to save and put aside something. Imagine, thousands of years ago, Ramcharitmanas, Ramayana, Sri Ram is speaking about the importance of saving your resources, your material wealth. So this was a little bit in terms of art and how I see it from our scriptures and the link with Chanakya and bringing it back towards our actual scriptures and so on. But the question about what ministry and what schools are doing, I'm saying we are trying, and I say we as an educator myself, but it is not enough. And one of the reasons it's not enough is because of the same things that Dr. Arjoon spoke about. Because some of these same children, they come from families that are involved in agriculture. And there are families that are struggling because they do not have land tenure. And I could speak about Swaha Hindu College. I was the principal there. And maybe about a quarter of the children there, their families are involved in some form of agriculture. But if you check those who are pursuing agriculture at Form 4 and Form 5 level, you'll get 30 or 40 students out of the 650. Because the reality is, they do not see it as something sustainable. They do not see it as something lucrative for them in the future. Land tenure is one. The incentives being offered. Climate change is something that has started affecting some of the crops. Dr. Arjoon may know more about that. Panichandra may know more about that. Maybe what is required is, again, the smart technology that Doc spoke about. Training our people, teaching them how to actually utilize it, and maybe crop rotation, maybe modifying their strategies to cope with the changes, because there are people who the yield that they would have gotten from land. And I do puja also, just as our other pundits here, for many of our chelas who are involved in agriculture. And they are saying, Panditji, the land does not produce as much as it did. And is it that the land is not producing, or maybe, certain strategies need to change to meet with the challenges of today? But I'm saying that there are opportunities to be had, but it is not enough, and our children are not seeing it as lucrative. Panajaydat, Dr. Arjoon. And it's not that teachers are not encouraging them. We are telling them all the time. I mean, I grew up, I went to Naparima College, and going to school there during crop time, and there was believe it or not, the train was still carrying the sugar cane up until the late 90s. People didn't know that, right? I was telling my children that they didn't believe it had trains still running in Trinidad in 1994, 95, when I was still in school. And the reality is, you would actually smell using St. Madeleine factory when that sugar is being made. That scent emanated from there. It permeated the entire air. I would be on assembly in the courtyard, and you're smelling that. And you feel a sense of joy, satisfaction. It sounds strange, because you feel that this is taking place in your country. It is something that was worthwhile. And now we are purchasing, we're importing. When we had all of this in our country, what was needed? In fact, if I'm not mistaken, usine would have been probably one of the largest sugar factories in this Western Hemisphere. So enough is not being done. A lot more has to be done to entice our children. But I could tell you the ministry is trying. Just today, I was at a school, I could say Presal Secondary, where there is an event coming up next week where the ministry, in collaboration with a few other companies, are trying to boost agriculture and encourage participation in agriculture by, normal thing, planting gardens, and they're having a Iron Chef competition from the same garden that you plant for children in schools, which is something just to encourage them. So it is a step in the right direction, but a lot has to be more. And I wish, I know Dr. Arjoon will do it, but send these recommendations to the powers that be. Both sides, right? Government and opposition, that people can actually come up with strategies to take the country forward. Sorry if I said too much, Panajaidat.
No, that's a
ahead.
great
Yeah.
contribution. Yeah. So I think that, I mean, we have had contributions from all of the members of the panel, and I think we all agree that, in terms of the principles, the ideologies, the technology, all of those things that we have seen mentioned in all of these scriptures, if implemented in the right way, then it certainly provides a promise of something better for our economy, and that really is what we are speaking about. So I'll just like to change the discussion a little bit and, focus, Doc, on something that is related, and he mentioned it, the puja store. But there are many other institutions. So for example, you'll have the roti shop, right? The doubles man, the person who makes sweets, which, in many cases they have developed themselves into SMEs. We know that in any economy, especially Caribbean economies in Trinidad, the SMEs make up a large percentage of businesses. And these things are directly linked to Hinduism. So you would notice that there are certain countries where religion has died off, that any business associated with that doesn't exist anymore. So you'll notice that countries like Haiti, etc., that are poorer, you don't see this level of religious progression. In Trinidad, we are very fortunate in the sense that when it comes to religion, whatever it may be, whether we talk about Hinduism, with the growth of Hinduism also comes economic wealth. And also with the growth of Hinduism and the perpetuation of Hinduism, there are certain values of our people that makes us productive and obviously adds to the social welfare and the economic strength and stability of the country. So Doc, you being the expert in the panel, I'll just pass over to you to talk a little bit about that, that link between and the need for us to propagate our dharma and how that is linked to economic prosperity through various businesses. We have always seen where people say, well, the puja store trying to rip off, why is selling that? All of these things, owning a puja store myself, I hear these type of comments. But there's a rule for all of these, and there's a both the religion and the businesses are inextricably linked. So, Doc, you can probably, give us some information, your insights on this.
So, you made several very important points there. When our ancestors came here, they whether they realized it or not, they were in my view, they were some of the greatest karma yogis to have ever walked the earth here in Trinidad and Tobago, because they came here with a mission, with an objective. They worked extremely hard and selflessly for their families, for their children especially, and their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, so that we in this generation, their attempts then, their hard work back then was so that we in this particular generation could have a better life and could be well educated, highly qualified, and of course enjoy the wealth that they were deprived of, or they were not able to enjoy back in their day. So that in itself tells me that our ancestors followed dharmic principles, especially that principle of duty and righteousness, especially to one's family and one's generation. That attitude, that ethical conduct has, and of course the ethical conduct that all our scriptures teach us, is being practiced by many Hindus in this day and age who are in business, and also many professionals with some form of influence in the economy, because the way they go about their business, their entrepreneurship activities is through moralistic behavior. And you find that businesses that adhere to ethical practices, what it benefits them, because when you are ethical, it builds trust with your customers. Your employees trust you as well because you look after their welfare. The stakeholders, all your stakeholders involved, trust you as well, and that leads to long-term successes and a positive reputation. And all of these stem from the teachings from our shastras that businessmen that belong to the Hindu faith continue to follow. They do follow, as I mentioned, the principle of karma, action and consequence. Many of them still live by that particular principle. They believe by that particular principle. So it encourages them to act responsibly and be accountable for their actions. So that, and in doing so, that ensures more sustainable and fair practices. And also, by adhering to the law of karma, it encourages many of them to not focus on the short term or the medium term, not what their business can achieve in the next year or next 5 years down the road, but also on the long-term impact of their investment actions, right? They try to take and implement strategies now that can be beneficial to their organization and the organization if and when their children picks it up many years down the road. So some of them actually adopt the mentality of avoiding short-term gains in order to acquire long-term profits and long-term stability. We also talk a lot in our scriptures about ahimsa, about non-violence, and I like to look at it in the framework in modern business, in the modern corporate world, as emphasizing a non-confrontational and a non-violent way, a non-conflict type way of resolving problems within the workplace. Many businessmen, many owners of businesses that belong to the Hindu faith, they tend to treat their employees fairly. They tend to have a very ethical way in which they deal with their employees and with applying non-confrontational conflict resolutions within their organizations, and non-exploitative practices. So that, I think, links to the ahimsa aspect of Hinduism. And then there's also satyam, truthfulness, that encourages honesty and transparency, yet again, in business organizations, so that when you are transparent as a businessman in that respect, it builds, again, greater trust with your customers, your employees, your stakeholders. They regard you as someone with integrity, so they are more inclined to do business with you as opposed to doing business with somebody who is engaging in unscrupulous or fraudulent activities ever so often. And of course, there's savor. Even though people are in business to make a profit, there are many businessmen that, of course, engage in their own types of charity. They give to various religious organizations. They do give contributions to needy households, etc. Savor underscores the importance of serving others, and businesses, many of them, make that a priority in several times of the year to give back to their community service, community engagement as well, which in turn helps them to build a loyal customer following. As Pandit Chandradat and even you, Pandit Jaidat, I'm sure you would have come across the term corporate social responsibility. Well, that links right back to karma yoga in Hinduism, because engaging in CSR activities aligns with the principles of seva, fostering goodwill and supporting the societal development through your business organization.
Yes, definitely. And when we look at the foundation of Sanatan Dharma, the 4 pillars, Satyam, Saucham, Daya, Dhanam. Satyam, truthfulness, honesty in the way that you do business. Saucham, cleanliness. Daya, compassion, and Dan, charity. It all links to CSR. And when your strategic intent, when you're creating a strategic plan, you start with your mission, your vision, your core values. And you'll notice that most of the core values in every organization always circles around the idea of honesty, accountability, responsibility, truthfulness, which aligns with the fundamental principles and values of Hinduism. You spoke of the ahimsa. and ahimsa, non-violence, non-aggression, live and let live. And, even in business strategy, there's the concept of red ocean strategy versus blue ocean. Red ocean, you go head to head with someone and you try to defeat them and take their market share. Blue ocean, you try to find something new, something different. And in business, a lot of persons are going that direction of blue ocean, where you find new strategies, new markets, new areas, so that you don't have to compete with someone. And in that way you can, you can benefit and everyone gets a piece of the pie. So, these type of values, and it's a good point where we have to wrap up in a short while. So I'll give each of the panelists a chance to, make their closing comments. But my closing comment will be this, Doc, and just to say that, I mean, this has been extremely valuable, and we'll invite you sometime again in the future to continue some of this discussion, and maybe some other discussions that may be valuable based from your perspective for us to discuss. All of these principles that we spoke about, Pandit Ishwar spoke about, the idea of art, dharma, karma, and moksha. If you look at Maslow's theory, it all starts with art. This idea of, I mean, without wealth, there's nothing else that we can do, right? And it ends with self-actualization, which is similar to moksha and liberation. So that a lot of the concept that we see in Western, in the Western world, what we are taught, even in economics, that what we are seeing from the Hindu perspective has preceded all of that. Are we not saying that what we learn in the Western world through economics and all that has borrowed from what is in Hinduism? But we have a noble tradition. And at some point, in some way, whether it is through the curriculum that is developed by a Hindu university in Trinidad and Tobago, by yourself as an educator, by all of us, whatever role we have to play, to at least let our young Hindus know that there's something that they can be proud of. When you learn about capitalism, when you learn about taxation, you learn about quality of life, etc. Whatever you learn on the Western side, that in our own tradition, our own scriptures, we do have those same concepts that would have preceded all of that, so that there's a sense of pride in what we have, and a sense of pride in what our ancestors would have saved for us, and ensure that it perpetuated over the years. And I think that this is an apt discussion, especially given that we're only 1 week, post Indian Arrival Day, that we can sit and have these type of discussions, not as older persons, but as younger Hindus ourselves, and all of us here as professionals. So for my own, from my own side, Doc, thank you very much for coming in the program and sharing those very deep insights with us. So I'll ask Pandit Chandrat to make his final comments, and Pandit Ishwar, who will end off our program.
Thank you, Pandit. Dr. Arjoon, again, we're within session. It was very informative, full of information and wisdom. My position is, I think there's a huge lag between the principles of Sanatana Dharma and the applicability of it in modern society, in terms of the business we do, our education, the way we live our lives. And it's something that Pandit Jayat would have heard me say, 100 times, that, we need to start literally using our scriptures, applying it to the way we live, so that there isn't a case of, well, we learn scripture through going to temple or through reading them, but we learn our scripture, we apply the principles of Sanatana Dharma through the way we live, and in everything that we do, not just the puja and the hawan, but how we do our business, how we go to school, how we are as professionals. And I think this was a fantastic start. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd love to be part of these sessions again. Once we are, having these types of conversations, because I really think that, society needs to know, Hindus need to know, and they need to understand. And one of the best way, or the best way that we can apply Sanatana Dharma is by actually living it in our everyday lives. And I think that this is a fantastic way to start, and showing the applicability of our scriptures to these things, simple things like business or business concepts, and even our education, is something that it's fantastic, and it's something that we should promote and should always have at the forefront of our minds. So thank you, Dr. Arjoon, for being with us today. And of course, thank you, Pandit Jayat and Pandit Ishwar, for the opportunity to join you all here this afternoon.
Pandit Ishwar?
So, yes, I also want to thank Dr. Arjoon. It's a pleasure joining with you on this program, and really not just a pleasure, it's a privilege to to sit with someone who is so well respected in the national community, internationally also. So you are well liked, I would say well loved by our SWAHA members. And this is no mama guy, right? This is reality and throughout our nation. And I know internationally too, people consider you highly. Panichandra, that also we are grateful that you are there with us. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience in terms of financial matters as well. And it just, Panajai, it brings home the point. We have discussed it many times on our program, but we have never really formalized it. But, the whole idea of a Hindu think tank, really,
Yeah.
Hindus who are coming together, professionals from all different spheres, and are really, Modi has sort of done something similar in India. That cannot work here in Trinidad, but we are, it isn't in terms of governance really, but just really to motivate our people and to push society forward, right? And this is something we as SWAHA, and I know Dr. Arjoon noticed we have started working a while now with many different organizations, religious organizations and other entities as well. And I'm glad that we had Dr. Arjoon here today. And I'm sure that if he's invited again at some point in time, he'll be willing to come because the information shared here I see as invaluable. So thanks to our panelists who joined us today and to our viewers. You can look forward to more intellectually stimulating programs like this. Maybe less of me talking and more of hearing from experts, right? So I don't know if there's anything else, so we conclude.
Just one more statement.
Go ahead.
We always speak about Hindu leaders, and when we think that the person that comes to mind is a Pandit, but we have persons like Dr. Vaalmikki who are leaders and persons that we are proud of. Without persons like this, we can't do anything. Hinduism is being propagated not because of Pandits alone, but obviously because of persons like you. And even as a young Hindu myself, you are probably younger than us. We are very proud of you and what you have achieved. And you have represented not just your profession, but you have represented persons of Indian origin, like all of us here, and you have represented yourself as a Hindu very well. And we know that you do a lot of work to propagate that, and you're proud of yourself as a Hindu. And I think that is wonderful. So we say blessings to you and your family.
Well, thank you very much for those very kind words, Jaidat, and also Panit Ishwar and Panit Chandradat. I think in my view, and this is why I tell myself on a daily basis, it's important to live life in a particular manner with not just being ambitious to achieve a lot of things, to being ambitious to achieving greatness in life, but achieving it in a very balanced way, because our ancestors, we owe this much to our ancestors. They came here trying to escape a harsh life in India, and they came to Trinidad and Tobago only to be met with also in many instances harsh consequences as well. But yet still, they toiled, they worked very hard to get us where we are in life today. And I think as Hindus, we owe them a significant debt to continue their great legacy. And part of propagating this legacy is ensuring that we live in harmony with nature, having sustainable practices that is very holistic, and living with honoring the teachings of the scriptures and the dharmic teachings, trying to build a strong ethical foundation and to foster a positive work environment on a daily basis. And the list could go on and on, all to achieve sustainable success so that the later generations down the road could continue in this trajectory of honoring the legacy that what our great ancestors have left for us.
Definitely. So thank you again, and I'll pass over to Pandit Ishwar, who will lead us in closing prayer.
All right, so viewers, I remind you, of course, this program is aired on Thursday morning, and then on Saturday, and it's also aired on Friday. Saturday, it's around 4 p.m. It's on Thursday at around 1 p.m. and then also on Friday. The timing slips me, but you are viewers of IETV, so you'll see it advertised, right? So we join together as we conclude, focus upon Prabhu Shri Ram. In our minds, Jai Shri Sita Ram. ओम रामाय रामभद्राय रामचंद्राय वेदसे रघुनाथाय नाथाय सीताय पतये नमः। ओम श्री सीता रामचंद्राय नमः। ओम शांति शांति शांति। बोल श्री सीता रामचंद्र की जय। स्वाहा माता की जय। सत्य सनातन धर्म की जय। सीताराम एवरीवन।
Sitaram.